I want to start by saying I'm not the kind of person who believes in things that can't be explained. I'm an engineer. I trust what I can measure. But there is something in my basement that I cannot explain, and I need to tell someone before I lose my nerve and pretend it never happened. 3 weeks ago, I bought my first house. It was a foreclosure, built in 1974, nothing remarkable. The inspection came back clean. The basement had a musty smell, but nothing unusual. I thought I got a good deal. I was wrong about that. I was so wrong. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac in a quiet suburb. Previous owner had died. No next of kin. Bank took it. I got it cheap. Too cheap, maybe. The first night I slept there, I heard something. Not a sound exactly. More like a pressure in my ears, like the house was holding its breath. I chalked it up to settling. Old houses do that. But it happened every night after. Always around 2 a.m., always lasting exactly 15 minutes. I know because I started timing it. 15 minutes of silence, so complete it felt like the house was listening back. I started renovating the basement on a Saturday. Tore down the wood paneling along the east wall. Behind it was cinder block, painted white, except for one section where the paint was significantly darker. Fresh, almost, like it had been painted recently to cover something. I tapped it with a hammer, and the sound was different. Hollow. Every other part of the wall sounded solid. This spot, roughly 4 feet wide, sounded like there was space behind it. I got my cold chisel and started working at the mortar. It came apart easier than it should have. Someone had opened this wall before me. It took me most of the afternoon to widen the hole enough to see inside. When I shined my flashlight through the gap, I expected to see a sealed-off utility space. What I saw was a room, maybe 10 by 10. Concrete floor, concrete walls, no windows. The beam of my flashlight caught something that made my stomach drop. The walls were covered in scratches. Not random clawing. They were organized. Tally marks. Hundreds of them, in neat rows, covering every wall from floor to ceiling. Someone had been counting days. Based on the number of marks, they had been in there for over a year. I widened the hole enough to climb through. The smell hit me first. Not rot, something else. Antiseptic, like bleach, layered over something organic and sour. The room was empty except for the scratches and a thin mattress in the corner, stained dark. There was a bucket. I won't describe what was in it. But what made my hands start shaking was the door. There was a door on the far wall, heavy steel, with a deadbolt on the outside. On the inside surface of the door, the scratches were deepest. Not tallies here. Words, carved over and over into the metal, gouged deep enough to leave curls of shaved steel on the floor. The words read, "He is still here." I told myself it was a warning. Then I told myself it was the ramblings of someone losing their mind. I took photos on my phone, thinking I'd call the police in the morning. I was tired. I was in denial. I told myself I'd deal with it later and went upstairs to bed. That night, the 2 a.m. silence didn't come. Instead, at exactly 2 a.m., I heard something I hadn't heard before. A sound from below my bedroom floor. Rhythmic, deliberate, like someone running their fingernails along concrete, slowly, patiently, the way you'd test a wall to find the weak spot. I lay in bed paralyzed, listening. The scratching moved. It traveled along the ceiling of the basement, which was my floor. It moved toward the stairs. Then it stopped. I heard something I can only describe as breathing. Not mine. Then footsteps, slow and heavy, on the basement stairs. I keep a baseball bat by the bed. I grabbed it and locked my bedroom door. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I heard the basement door open. It doesn't lock from the basement side. I heard it swing inward, slowly, the hinges making that sound hinges make when someone is being quiet but not quiet enough. At dawn, I called the police. They searched the house and the basement. They found the room. They found the mattress, the bucket, the scratches. They took it seriously. They took DNA samples. They told me to stay somewhere else for a few days. I went to a hotel. The detective assigned to the case called me 2 days later. The previous owner had died of natural causes, no suspicion of foul play. But the room wasn't his. The construction on the inside was newer than the house. Someone had built that room inside the basement after the house was already standing. Someone had lived in that house, hidden, while the previous owner was alive. The detective thought it was someone squatting who had been locked in by accident when the owner died and the bank sealed the house. That would explain the tally marks. What it didn't explain was the door. The heavy steel door with the deadbolt on the outside. Squatters don't build cells. They don't install deadbolts designed to keep someone in. And they don't carve "he is still here" into the inside of the door. The detective said they'd look into it. I could tell by his tone he didn't have answers and didn't expect to find any. I stayed at the hotel another week, trying to convince myself it was over. It wasn't over. The detective called me a week later. The DNA from the mattress matched a missing person report filed 9 months ago. A man named Derek Cole, 34, lived 2 towns over, disappeared after going for a run. They found him, or what was left of his presence, in that room. But here's the thing that keeps me up. The scratches, the tally marks, they stopped at 387 days. Derek was only missing for 9 months. That room had been used before. Someone else had been in there before Derek. And whoever built that room had the keys to the house the whole time I'd been living there. I went back to the house with the detective. We checked every lock. The basement room's deadbolt required a key, a specific heavy-duty key. When the cameras came back, everything looked normal. I reviewed the footage. There was a gap, not static, just gone, like the recording had been cleanly cut. I called the security company. They said the system showed no outage. The cameras had been recording continuously. They sent me the footage. There was no gap. 15 minutes of footage showing my empty house. Every angle, nothing moving. But I had watched the screens go dark. I know what I saw. The footage they sent me showed 15 minutes of my living room, hallway, basement. Everything fine. Except in the basement footage, the door to the hidden room was open. I went downstairs. The door to the room was closed. I hadn't been in the basement since the police searched it. I hadn't touched that door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring at it. The handle had fingerprints in the dust. Fresh ones, pressed from the inside. I called the detective again. He came out, looked at the prints, sent them to the lab. They didn't match Derek. They didn't match the previous owner. They matched someone in the system, a man with a record for breaking and entering, but no current address on file. The detective told me they'd try to find him. I asked him what happens if they don't. He didn't have an answer. I don't sleep in that house anymore. I put it on the market. It's been 3 weeks, no buyers. I go back during the day to check on it. Last Tuesday, I went to the basement. The wall I'd broken through had been repaired. Fresh cinder block, fresh mortar, painted to match. The door to the hidden room was gone, walled over. I never hired anyone to fix it. I called the detective. He came out, confirmed no one had been authorized to do repairs. He looked at the new wall, knocked on it. Solid.